Hello, thanks for joining us on Project Justice on Africa Independent Television, AIT. I am Utubal More. In the past 9 months or 10 months or thereabouts, over 5,000 inmates are said to have escaped from the various custodial centers in Nigeria in a jailbreak attempt and successful jailbreaks that has occurred 15 times in the country within the period. Now, to help address this problem, one thing that has been identified has been congested prison centers. And the federal government is taking an initiative, which is to set up virtual court hearings in the custodial centers across the country. It hopes that by doing so, they'll be able to accelerate the hearing and the trial process of persons who have been awaiting trial. The numbers, which has been put at about 74% of Nigeria's prison population. Well, joining me at this time to discuss the issues in Nigeria's custodial and correctional centers is the convener of the African Youth Leadership Roundtable Initiative, Dele Omoyeni. He is setting up an initiative which seeks to provide legal services for indigent members of the population in the Nigerian correctional services who would need the services of lawyers to represent them as these virtual court hearings commences. Dele, thank you so much for joining us.
It's good to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, so let's bring you at this point the initiative of the federal government. Our correspondent, Austin Okeze, reported this a couple of days ago about the visits of the Attorney General and other members of the Presidential Committee on the Decongestion of Nigerian Correctional Centers. Their visit to the Kuje prison now.
For a major part of 2020, judiciaries around the world, including Nigeria, were shut down due to COVID-19. Few cases were filed, hearings were skeletal, adjournments ran into months, while access to courtrooms remained limited. This resulted in a major backlog of court cases. Following the Supreme Court decision on July 14, 2020, affirming virtual court proceedings and to address the backlog of cases to accelerate court proceedings, the Federal Ministry of Justice, in collaboration with the UNDP Nigeria and the government of Japan, decided that virtual court sitting in correctional centers across Nigeria is key to enable decongest custodial centers nationwide. The Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, who relied on Section 36, Subsection 6 of the 1999 Constitution, said, in order to achieve lasting reforms in the criminal justice sector, the Federal Ministry of Justice expedited its engagement with the Nigerian correctional centers.
It's founded on the constitutional principle of fundamental rights to fair hearing that requires the court to hear and determine cases in public and the physical presence of the suspect or parties in court. I assure you that the virtual court proceedings are in compliance with the provision of Section 36, Subsection 3 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
It is expected that these virtual court facilities will fit into the already existing virtual court facilities that we have in the judiciary. This will, in turn, save the government of Nigeria cost on security and mobilization of accused persons to courts, thereby facilitating justice delivery in Nigeria.
The Minister of Interior, Ralph Arebishola, believes the idea of a virtual sitting came at the right time and stated that government has been uncomfortable with the long time it takes for cases to be disposed of. As he puts it, 50,992 inmates, representing 74% of the total population of inmates in custodial centers, are awaiting trial, while 17,755 inmates, which represents 26%, are convicts.
With the special cooperation of state government, since most offenders are indeed state offenders, being tried under state laws, under state courts by state judges. As we are advocating for virtual courtrooms, we are advocating that the state governments should support the rapid decongestion of our facilities creatively.
This kind of synergy and sense of commitment by all the key players in the criminal justice system will certainly go a long way to guarantee quick dispensation of justice and respect for the right of all citizens.
program attended by former and current chief justices and other key players.
Means of Interior
Cases
to officially cut the teeth.
reduce time spent in trial detention while also helping to reduce administration and operational costs. Following the launch of the Kuje Federal Court rules, the Presidential Committee on Correctional Reforms and Decongestion successfully effected the release of 15 inmates with minor offences with an optional fine. The fines were paid and penalties effected.
Let's start by talking about the conditions of the correctional centers, the custodial centers across the country. I'm sure you've been around a couple of some of them. What have you seen? What have you observed?
Okay, once again, thank you so much for this opportunity. Well, the word correctional is quite debatable. So one of the first things that jumps at me is that our correctional facilities in Nigeria shouldn't hold up to 50,000, thereabout. That's the capacity, but we have about 80,000. And so because we're a youth-based organization, the fact is that 74% of inmates in Nigerian prisons are awaiting trial. That brings that figure to about 54,000. Now, more than half of that figure are young people under 30. Now, the problem with that is that before you start out in life, you are rated at a disadvantage in the sense that you are awaiting trial endlessly for years on end. But in that process, you are interacting with, so for instance, a normal jail cell that should hold maybe 10 people is holding maybe 40, 50 people. Now, you're in the same space interacting with already convicted, hardened criminals, some armed robbers, some murderers, some thieves, some terrorists, and all that. And a system that should correct your behavior ends up at the end of the day making you worse than you went in. And so the first thing that jumps to us is overcrowding breeds two things. First and foremost, the health conditions there are more often than not appalling. Secondly, your interaction. Interaction is what determines whether a behavior is corrected or enhanced. You know, so if you interact with this level of people, this level of minds, they definitely will rub off on you as a young person. And so for our organization, it means that a young person under 30, needlessly awaiting trial for endless years, is at a disadvantage already. Now, coupled with the fact that most of these young people are in for first-time offenses that are non-violent crimes. Now, it tells you the kind of mind that they go into that place with, and then it tells you the kind of mind that they will come out of that place with. Because you find out that more often than not, someone who is awaiting trial has been in jail for much more than the allotted time if you are convicted for that crime. This is aside the other population of people who the Nigerian police goes to raid a particular area just because they hear, oh, something is happening there. They go there, they raid everybody, and then they dump them in the holding cells in the police station. And then from there, we hear, allegedly, because we're national television. But these are things that we hear from our interactions. And it's okay, you bring money to me. I don't have money. Okay, let's charge you for armed robbery. And then they dump you in the cells there. Now, of course, the correctional facilities say it's not our fault. The Ministry of Insurance says it's not our fault. We can't release prisoners. Our job is to hold them. So we still have to come back to the Ministry of Justice. But just to answer your question, to drive that home. Lastly, the other day on national television, I think it was on AIT here, I watched the DG of the correctional facilities. And the Senate was arguing over how much a prisoner needs to eat a day. And I hear 1,000 naira. And okay, I think it was at 700 naira. And then in this budget, it should go to 1,000 naira thereabouts. I can tell you for free that there is nothing close to 700 naira that prisoners used to feed per day in Nigerian prisons. Take it to the bank. And of course, I mean, this is AIT. You pride yourself in that. You can do an investigative report and find out what kind of meals do they eat in the prisons. That's the truth.
So many issues that you brought up, Dele. Let me take the first one, which is that most of the time, these persons are first-time offenders.
Yes.
They are sent to the prison. We call it correctional centers now, for offenses that ordinarily should not require, them being in prison in the first place.
Of course, maybe community service or something.
Community service. Now, our Administration of Criminal Justice Act 2015 makes provisions for this non-custodial sentencing. But we still find, especially at the lower rung of the ladder, magistrates' courts and upper area courts,
Yes.
sending people on prison remand, people such as those in this category. Why is that still happening?
The first things first is that this has been going on for a very long time. A lot of people have talked about this, that security agencies in Nigeria will first arrest before they start doing investigations. And so you find out that more often than not, so I give you an example, which was one of the cases that we had just recently.
Yeah.
You say a guy steals a phone, right? He stole the phone, there's no witness. You, the police yourself, you don't have any evidence to prove that. No CCTV, nothing to prove that he stole the phone. Now you bring the case to court. The judge says, okay, what is the problem? This person, where is the phone that he stole? Who is alleging that he stole the phone? Where are the witnesses? We had a guy stay in prison for over 2 years. And then, luckily, that's the word, because that's another case entirely. Because you find out that there are times that a case should come up. The guys in correctional facility will tell you, oh, there's no fuel in our vehicle to convey these people to the court. Yeah. And so the case comes up in court that day, and the judge asks, oh, where is this person? Oh, he's not in court. They adjourn the case.
So sometimes the adjournment takes 6 months.
So this guy, lucky in his own case, he got to court that day. And the judge was saying, okay, he stole the phone over 2 years ago. Where is the person alleging him for stealing the phone? The police couldn't provide the person. Where are the witnesses? They couldn't provide any witness. So what is the case against this guy? He's just sitting in prison. The judge had to say, please let him go. So you find out that more often than not, the police have not done a proper job. And then they just bring the case to court. And then the judge looks at it that, okay, you know what? I mean, these investigations have not been concluded. Yeah. Okay, can we give you time? Because that's what the layers of this police will say, give us time. And then they keep giving them time. And then they keep giving them time. And if you don't have lawyers who know their onions, they keep just dumping you in the prison cells. That aside, secondly, I think one of the issues that we need to deal with is the fact that our lawyers, our judges need to do the country a big favor. Yeah. In the sense that because this is also administration of criminal justice, if the police brings a case file before you, and you see obviously that they've done a terrible job at investigating, tell them that until you have complete evidence, I have to let this guy go. You either do your investigations properly or you let this guy go. Because why? It is better for 20 criminals to go free than one innocent person
to rot in jail.
So our judges to help us. If the police has not done a good job at investigating, or EFCC or anybody, then let them go and do their job. Don't just dump somebody in the cell just because somebody somewhere has not done their job.
All right. Now let's talk about the congested nature of the prisons. Whether there's a relationship between the nature of how congested the prisons are right now and the recent jailbreaks we've witnessed recently. Because I remember when the situation in the prison in along Sapler Road in Benin, when there was a prison break there. And one of those who was involved, who escaped, I think somebody was able to catch him somewhere, so I said, he's been awaiting trial for over 2 years. And at what time, and his case was on a continuous adjournment. At what time is he going to get justice? And as far as he's concerned, he was insisting that he never committed the crime that he committed. Now, if you have a high number of persons behind bars awaiting trial, statistics indicate that over 74% of the prison population are awaiting trial. Does that contribute to the insecurity within the walls of the prison itself?
In fact, it doesn't just contribute, it's the number one reason for insecurity. And unfortunately, this is national television, so I'm trying to be careful. For a policeman who actually carries a gun to be complaining about welfare, and that's one of the things that happened during the entire NSAS debacle.
Absolutely.
Where young people say, we're even fighting for you policemen. The conditions in which you serve are appalling. So a policeman who carries a rifle can have issues with welfare. How much more an officer of the correctional facility who looks at it that these guys want to escape? Let me protect my life first. You know, so the guy is not going to go out of his way to ensure that he prevents a jailbreak. That's the first thing. The second thing is, what are the conditions in these places? I've talked about hygiene. Yeah. I talked about interaction. The guy looks at it that, look, I mean, what's the worst that can happen? They'll kill me. Well, I mean, I'm probably living in a much more worse state than being there right now. So I'd rather just take the opportunity, you know. And then, of course, he goes for it, regardless of what danger, comes to his life. And then, of course, you've seen that some of these jailbreaks have been, quote unquote, successful. Yeah. You know, because it's an obvious failure of the system. So all those issues around this matter, welfare of the prison officials, the over-congestion, and I've heard rumors where people have said to me, senior lawyers have said to me, look, the guys in the correctional facilities or in that system want the numbers because they want their budgets to keep getting bigger and bigger. That's what senior lawyers have told me. I'm not a lawyer, so but they deal with inmates, and for senior lawyers to say these things, it's quite heavy, you know, a thing to say. I'm not saying that that's what's happening, but if that's the case, in several countries around the world, there are better ways for correctional officers and institutions to get more funding from government than just to say we keep numbers to get funding from government. It's unfortunate.
It's worrisome. Now, let's talk about the new initiative of virtual court sittings, which the federal government with the Federal Ministry of Justice is initiating. The pilot program started at the Kuje Correctional Center on Tuesday, and the whole idea is, okay, these persons who have trial cases that they've not been able to have their day in court, a judge would link up via, virtual means, hear their cases, and dispense with them. Those who need to be let go, let go. Those whose trial needs to be fast-tracking, and allow them to go. How helpful do you think it would go in helping solve the problem we have at hand right now?
Okay, so one of the things that we actually proposed as an organization, because we're a solution-based organization, is a bit similar to this. This would actually do a bit, but it won't go a long way, and that's the truth. So how many days in a week do you want to have virtual trials? How often do you want to have virtual trials? These are the issues, right? I would have suggested, and we are proposing, because we'll meet the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court very soon on a visit, that we do omnibus trials. That's the only way to go. You can't...
When you say omnibus trial,
yes,
what do you mean?
Good. So, if we can't do it every quarter, we can do it every 6 months. To say, for the next 1 week, judges, and I know that I agree that the judicial system is overburdened. We need more judges, we need more officers, because election petition, court, kidnapping, court, armed robbery, court, terrorism, court. I know that the system is overburdened, but we could do better. Why? Because there's no keener way to identify how a society treats its people than how it treats indigent people. That's important.
That's the other point you made there, because most of the people who fall into this category are people from very poor backgrounds.
Absolutely.
I've seen stories of a woman who had come to us to cry repeatedly that my son just went out and said he's going to watch a Champions League game at the corner, at the viewing center. And all of a sudden the place was raided.
Of course.
He was taken away. And the next thing, they said the son was involved in armed robbery or cultism and has been in prison for the past 9 months or 11 months.
Yes.
So that people from poor backgrounds who do not even have access to, or even the wherewithal in terms of finances to pay for lawyers to represent them.
Or who don't have the personality of Utibi to call the family father and say, the police are harassing me, and that's the truth. That's the honest truth, indigent people. So our omnibus trials would be to say, okay, once every 6 months, this entire week, you can start this way and say, every case file of a first-time offender for a non-violent crime, for this entire week, please can you dispense with all these case files? That way, if there are 1,000 case files of such case, a minimum of 800 to 900 will be dispensed with. And so the guy is either going for conviction and then will begin to serve his time. So he knows that, okay, I'm going to serve my time for 6 months or 1 year, and I'm out in the next 1 year. That offers some level of closure And if you're outrightly innocent or there's no evidence, you can go scot-free. That way, you achieve a whole lot more than saying, okay, once in a while you do virtual court sittings. Once in a while you do virtual court sittings, maybe.
But can we also look at the virtual court sitting in this? Because earlier you talked about, which is something I've experienced also covering the courts for a while before now, is that most of the time these prison officials have problems of logistics, getting these inmates to court.
Yes.
Because let's take, for instance, Abuja. All right, so you have the Kuje Correctional Facility, which is several kilometers from the city center. They have to convert these persons to the different courts. Let's say in Maitama, where the court holds, the High Court of the FCT holds. It's quite a distance. Most of the time, they may not have the resources, and some of them have actually complained not having resources in terms of field to get these people here. And you have a virtual court sitting. You have a judge, for instance, sitting in Maitama, but having cases lined up virtually at the Kuje Correctional Facility, and he can take all those cases. But what I think would be a challenge is, would those people all have their lawyers present, and how prepared would the police be and the prosecution to provide the necessary evidence to fast track these cases? So do you actually rule it out completely, that virtual court sitting, because it takes away the challenge of logistics, which is a regular feature in the problems that
it takes away logistics from one aspect of the divide. That's what it does, because again, the lawyers to these people have to then be at the Kuje Correctional Facility. They have to go there because you have to be where your client is. So it takes away the logistics from the hands of the correctional facility. But then it then dumps it on the indigent person in this case who absolutely does not have the resources to even collect a lawyer in the first place. So like I said, it's a foot in front. But I mean, it's still, for me, piecemeal, because you find that once in a while the chief judge of the state goes to the prisons and then sets one or two people free, and then I mean, this is still going to be piecemeal, because a virtual sitting will maybe address maybe 5 cases a day, because it is virtual. Don't also forget that we also have issues with connectivity and all of that. So it is the job of the judiciary, and then you can go through the legal aid council to say, provide logistics for correctional facilities.
But it's not the job for legal aid council.
It is not. But
the correctional facilities have their budgets.
They have their budgets. But it's also the job of legal aid council in developed crimes. When you are arrested by the police, anybody, they read you your rights. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, however, one will be provided for you, which I presume is the job of the legal aid council. And I'm not trying to be hard on them. They also have their challenges as well, just like the correctional facilities that was mentioned. I'm not trying to be hard on them, but if they were actually on top of their game, we would have over 54,000 people awaiting trial in this country. So there has to be a give and take to say these case files, 1,000 of them, A, B, C, D. Let's do an A, B, C, D and say, okay, A, for all the A's, go to court, so and so. If you cannot afford a lawyer, provide a lawyer for them in court there. So the lawyer goes through the case file, maybe the judge calls the case. Oh, these are the cases. Who is the person alleging this person? What is the evidence? Look at all these things once and for all, dispense of the case. And you do that, snappy. Because you are on site, it makes it much more faster. Virtually, well, I don't know. And like I said, I don't want to totally dismiss what an entire committee has done, but I still think it's still piecemeal.
It can be better, that's what you're saying.
Yes.
But of course, to actually address the problem comprehensively, like you have said, we have to go back to the fundamentals.
Yes.
The fundamentals, which is even highlighted in the AJA 2015 Administration of Criminal Justice Act, is the investigation level. Because if the police are able to get it right at that level, then it wouldn't take the police long to prosecute the case in a space of a few weeks or a few months. Dispense with it, and the court will determine whether or not the person is guilty to go behind bars and serve his time, or whether the person is free and should be let go. And that's where I think the authorities should also invest much of its resources in, to empower the investigative authorities and the police to do their jobs properly at that level, so that you don't throw people in prison custody and go searching for evidence like is usually the case. But let's talk about your initiative, providing legal services for these persons. What's the strategy to it? How do you intend to move with that?
Okay, so the Lincoln Brigade was set up because we found out that, like I said, when we started, more than half of the guys awaiting trial are young people under 30.
Yeah.
For us, that means that life has dealt you a negative card even before your life has started. It will have far-reaching implications on how your life pans out.
Yeah.
Even when you indeed get out of prison, and so we wanted to seek justice in the sense that just because you have allegedly made a mistake, or just because you have even made a mistake, which is whether you are innocent or you are even guilty. If you are innocent, we don't want you to endlessly await trial in prison. However, if you are guilty, get your conviction on time so that there's closure, so that you know, okay, for the next 10 years, I'm in prison. After 10 years, I come out.
So do you have a strategy of identifying who these persons who really need these legal services are?
Yes, of course. We do prison visits.
Okay.
People reach out to us as well, social media, via phone and all that, But we will look at the merits of your case before we jump in. We don't just jump into cases, because we're also trying to be a bit careful. So that you don't a dangerous person as well by
take the person out of.
Yes, just because the police has not done their jobs on that front. But if we have sufficient proof to believe that this person is not guilty, or
He's not supposed to be there in the first place.
He's not supposed to be there, or he's guilty but should of course get the conviction so that he gets on with his life. That's important.
So what you're doing, let's be clear here. What you're doing is not to help alleged criminals out of prison.
No.
What you're doing is provide legal services to determine whether somebody is a criminal that's supposed to serve his time, or somebody who is not supposed to be there in the first place.
Yes. So it's okay to make a mistake, but get a conviction and get a closure. So get a conviction and start your time, and start doing your time. And if you're not guilty, then come on, let's get them out.
Well, that's Project Justice for this week. I want to say thank you once again to my guest, Dele Omoyoni, who is the convener of the African Youth Leadership Roundtable Initiative. The initiative, of course, is to help indigent persons behind the bars to get justice, and those who are not supposed to be there to find their way out, especially those who cannot afford the services of lawyers. Thank you so much, Dele, for your time.
Thank you very much.
Well done on the initiative.
Thank you very much.
That's the show for this week. Thank you so much for being there with us. And until next time, on behalf of the production team, I am Mr. Have a wonderful evening.